Hello, and welcome to EDU 6350, Week 3. For the next couple weeks, we're going to be talking about the components of the curriculum system development process. This week, we're looking at chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5 has to do with models for curriculum system development. There are 4 models explained in your text, and you will definitely need to read these to become more familiar with them, but I'm going to give you a quick overview. The first model we're going to take a look at is Tyler. Tyler's model is inductive, and he recommended that curriculum developers identify general objectives by gathering data from 3 sources: learners, life outside of school or society, and subject matter. You can see that at the top of the diagram. Next, he applied some philosophical screens, and those are the philosophy of education and the psychology of learning. Then, instructional objectives are created with the design of learning experiences. So you can see how that flows down. Input, screens, and then what do we need as the instructional objectives. Taba's approach is somewhat similar to Tyler in that she starts with specifics. This model is also an inductive approach. She suggested that teachers start with the specifics and build to a general design. You can see this one kind of goes from the bottom up. She stated that teachers should practice the teaching of curriculum, then make revisions, determine a structure, and finally then introduce the new curriculum units. So with this particular model, there's room for feedback and improvement before you actually implement it in a structured environment. Then we have the Oliva model. So Oliva's model is a deductive model, and it has 12 components. So in the diagram, squares are used to represent the planning phases, and circles are the operational phases. So component 1 includes stating the goals and principles of the curriculum. So that's very similar to Tyler's screens. Component 2 analyzes the needs of the community in which the school is located, the needs of the students, and the subject matter needed to be taught. Components 3 and 4 specify curricular goals and objectives based on those goals, beliefs, and the needs that are in components 1 and 2. Component 5 helps to organize and implement. Instruction is addressed in components 6 and 7. Specific instructional strategies are in component 8. Component 9 addresses evaluation or assessment, and 10 is the implementation of the instructional strategies. So quite explicit is Olivia's model. It follows very targeted points. Finally, we move to the Gordon-Taylor model. So this model seems to incorporate a curricular system by blending the entire process of curriculum development, including a feedback loop, into one model. The model begins with standards, then specifications are developed from the examination of related data and evidence to determine if the rigor or parameters should be adjusted or not. Student assessments are designed and also aligned. So during all this time, professional development is provided with time to implement, gather data and evidence, evaluate, and make improvements. This particular model gives the intent of having greater impact on student learning outcomes than models that consider the components separately. After looking at the models, it's now time to look at the philosophy and aims of education. So really, when you're looking at this philosophy and the aims of education, you want to look at it through your own context. So how do educational beliefs frame expectations for adults and students at the school level? If you are in a classroom, you can kind of get an idea of this. Is having general educational expectations important for a country? And the setting always makes a difference with the educational aims, and in many cases, the philosophy of the administration and the teachers in the school. First, I wanted to take a look at the U.S. Department of Education's framework and their goals for education. Just going to look at the top goals there. Goal 1, to build a solid foundation for learning for all children. You can see that Objective 1B, every child reads well and independently by the end of 3rd grade, is kind of where we have the rule in statute in the state of Florida that states that if a student fails the FSA at the 3rd grade, that they will repeat, go to summer school, and all those choices. So that's where this comes from. Goal 2, reform the U.S. education system to help make it the best in the world. I find that interesting because we're not quite there yet. Goal 3, ensure access for all to high-quality post-secondary education and lifelong learning. You can read those objectives there. And Goal 4, to make the Education Department a high-performance organization. So you can see that the U.S. Department of Education does have goals for the nation. Now let's talk about the philosophies of education. While you're learning about these and reading about them in your textbook, I want you to consider the questions I have here for you. Which of the philosophies may be of particular importance in today's standards-based environment? Which of the philosophies are of most important in your context? And which of these are least important in your context? This might be something that you want to discuss in the forum this week. I think it will be quite interesting. So let's look at the 4 philosophies of education brought out in the text. First, we're going to talk about Reconstructionism. So Reconstructionists followed John Dewey's philosophy, and they proposed using school to achieve improvements in society. So their values were companionship, health, nourishment, and shelter. Perennialism includes seeing the goal of education as disciplining the mind. The development of a person to reason and the pursuit of truth is important to perennialists. Perennialists believe that truth is eternal, everlasting, and unchanging. Now, essentialists see education as the transmission of cultural heritage. Where Reconstructivists would change society, essentialists see to preserve it. Emphasis is placed on subject matter, making academic subjects the most important thing. Subject matter is controlled and very teacher-centered. So this curriculum has been the one to which most Americans have been exposed and the one they know best, especially teachers. I read a book not too long ago called The School Teacher by Dan Lordy, and in his book he states that teachers tend to teach in the way they were taught. That so supports essentialism, and it's sad because many of us were taught in a teacher-centered environment and less of a student-centered environment, yet we believe that students need to have some control of their learning. It's really tough to get out of the rut in which you were taught. Finally, progressivists see learning as child-centered. Education is not a product to be learned, but a process that continues for a lifetime. Students learn best when actively experiencing his or her world, according to progressivists. However, appealing to students' immediate needs and interests, sometimes progressive schools seem to sacrifice long-range needs, and the learners are not even aware of their deficits. So these 4 philosophies have some positives, and they also have some drawbacks. So again, think of the questions, and especially within your context. What philosophy do you see as most important in your context, and what philosophy do you see as least important? Be sure to support your position by providing examples and textual evidence. Again, this week, if you have any questions or comments, put them on the blog. Let's have some discussion. And then you can email the instructor, which is me, and give me a little bit of time to get back to you, but I will certainly try to do that.